Story 1: The Mysterious Stalker. In the summer of 2017, my friends and I were tired of our daily routines, so we decided to go camping. We picked a remote spot deep in the woods, far away from the hustle and bustle of the city. Our plan was simple: spend a few days hiking, cooking meals over a campfire, and stargazing under the night sky. The first few days went smoothly. We set up our tents, collected firewood, and spent our evenings sharing stories around a crackling campfire. Everything was calm and beautiful. However, things started to get strange when we discovered strange markings on the trees around our campsite. At first, we thought it might be the work of local animals or a previous camper leaving their mark. But as the nights went on, our unease grew. We would be in our tents, with only the soft sound of the wind to break the silence, and then we'd hear it. Faint footsteps in the distance, like someone was quietly walking around our campsite. A feeling of invisible tension hung over us, making us anxious and leading to whispered reassurances that it was probably just our imagination running wild in the darkness. On that unforgettable third night, the tension in our camp reached its peak. The mysterious footsteps that had troubled us on previous evenings had returned, but this time, there was something new. Faint, sporadic whispers mixed with the steps. Though we couldn't make out the words, the presence of this eerie voice was undeniable. We exchanged anxious glances, desperately holding on to the hope that these sounds were just the work of nighttime animals or rustling branches. The idea of an intruder seemed too far-fetched for our rational minds to accept. But as the night dragged on, our doubts slowly gave way to fear. Jesse, the bravest among us, suggested that we investigate. Armed with flashlights, we formed a line and left the comforting glow of the campfire, venturing into the dark, foreboding woods. The forest felt oddly alive, its nocturnal sounds keeping pace with our every step. We were nervous wrecks, but our determination to find the source of our unease kept us going. However, as minutes turned into an agonizing stretch of whispers and snapping twigs, it became clear that we were being led deeper into the woods, away from the safety of our campsite. Panic began to grip us as we realized we had strayed too far from our familiar surroundings. We made a unanimous decision to head back. But when we returned to our campsite, our fear turned into sheer horror. It was in complete disarray, our tents torn apart, our supplies strewn about and ruined. It was as if a violent, destructive force had run through our camp during our absence. We stood there, shocked and chilled to the bone. Our feeling of security had been shattered, replaced by a sickening realization that our intruder, whoever or whatever it was, had infiltrated our camp while we were lured away. The once peaceful forest had transformed into a dangerous and malevolent presence. As we gazed at the ruins of our campsite, fear gripped us. Our once protective tents were now torn and messed up, and our carefully organized supplies were scattered, and in some cases missing. The scene was shocking, as if a chaotic storm had ripped through our peaceful haven. In a state of panic, we searched the area, desperately calling out for anyone who might be nearby. Our flashlights darted around, revealing the desolation that had replaced our camp. There was no sign of the intruder, no hint of anyone's presence except our own. We soon understood the seriousness of our situation. Our supplies were ruined, the dark forest seemed ominous, and our sense of safety was shattered. We felt incredibly vulnerable, and there was no logical explanation for the destruction that had occurred. It defied all laws of nature and reason. Carefully, we gathered what was salvageable and decided to leave, unwilling to face the mysterious threat lurking in the woods any longer. The night air felt heavy as we moved, every noise making us jump in fear. We had a strong sense of being hunted. We retreated to a smaller clearing not far from our camp, planning to depart at dawn. Our flashlights served as our protectors, cutting through the thick darkness. We huddled together, trying to find safety in numbers. However, the encroaching night, filled with unseen terrors, played tricks on our frazzled nerves. We were no longer in control of this wilderness. We were prey in a forest that seemed to have developed a sinister will of its own. With our decision firmly in mind, we quickly packed up our meager belongings, feeling a rush of anxiety. The forest felt like it was closing in on us, with every rustle of leaves and distant snap only adding to our unease. Our goal was simple: to retrace our steps and get out of the woods, which seemed to have an eerie hold on us. As we made our way back to our original campsite, our fear grew even stronger. What had once been familiar now felt like a haunting reminder of a more innocent time. Our campsite had been disturbed, showing signs of an intruder. The campfire we had built was extinguished, leaving behind only cold embers, and that's when we noticed a chilling message written in the ashes. The words, "Leave or perish," were clearly marked in the burnt ground where our fire had once crackled. It felt like a message from some otherworldly presence, a clear warning that returning was a terrible idea. Fear consumed us as we realized the seriousness of the situation. We were no longer alone in this remote wilderness, and our presence had apparently angered some unknown entity. The urgency to escape overwhelmed us. Without a second thought, we turned and ran, leaving our campsite behind and giving up on the idea of figuring out the enigmatic threat that had intruded on our trip. The forest became a blur of terror, our hearts racing, and our steps driven by pure desperation. What had once been an inviting adventure had now turned into a terrifying maze. Finally, we burst out of the woods, gasping for breath, and the sight of our car parked at the trailhead brought immense relief. We didn't look back, didn't dare to think about what might be following us. With trembling hands, we fumbled for the keys, and the car roared to life. The sound of the engine was like a lifeline. As we sped away from that accursed forest, a deep sense of relief washed over us, but we would always carry the memory of those haunting events from our camping trip. The mystery of the mysterious stalker would remain unsolved, a dark and enigmatic chapter that would continue to haunt our memories and serve as a chilling reminder of the unexplainable horrors that can lurk in the most unexpected places. Story 2. The Midnight Hunt. It's been a few years since that weekend at the remote cabin, but I can't forget how it all started. We were a group of 5 friends: Alex, Sophie, Ethan, Olivia, and me. We were tired of our everyday routines and needed a break from the usual grind. So, we decided to rent a cabin deep in the woods for a getaway. When we got to the cabin, it was pretty much what you'd expect: a rustic place, surrounded by tall trees that made the whole area feel a bit eerie. The cabin itself looked like it had seen better days, with peeling paint and a roof covered in moss. It was kind of charming in its own way, though. We arrived just before sunset. The air was thick with the smell of pine, and the ground was soft underfoot. You could hear the wind rustling through the trees and the occasional chirping of birds. It was peaceful, like a scene from a postcard. As the sun went down, we gathered around a fire pit outside. We had a couple of beers and shared some stories, just enjoying each other's company. The crackling fire added to the atmosphere, casting weird shadows that made us jump a few times. That night, we laughed, joked, and talked about old times. We didn't have a care in the world, and it felt like we were on the brink of a memorable adventure. Little did we know what the woods had in store for us. Looking back now, maybe there were some signs that things weren't quite right, but we were too caught up in the moment to notice. The woods that had seemed inviting during the day took on a different vibe at night. There was a strange feeling in the air, but we brushed it off. The night started off pretty normal. We'd been sitting around the fire, talking about everything and nothing, and sharing a few more beers. It was relaxing, just what we needed. Then Alex decided to go to grab some firewood. We figured it was no big deal. We all needed firewood, and it was a good excuse to stretch his legs. He said he'd be back in a few minutes, so we didn't think much of it. Time passed, though, and Alex didn't return. We were starting to get antsy, wondering what was taking him so long. Sophie tried calling him on his phone, but when she put it on speaker, all we heard was static. It was strange, and unease crept in. We decided to give Alex a bit more time, thinking that maybe he ventured a bit too far or something. But when he didn't come back even after what felt like ages, we couldn't ignore the knot of worry in our stomachs and went to look for him. The night was dark, and the forest felt different in the absence of the sun. Our flashlights cut through the blackness, but there was no sign of Alex. His phone, strangely, was sitting on the ground, still connected to a call with Sophie, but it was just making weird noises. At that point, panic started to set in. We called out for him, our voices echoing into the forest, but there was no response. It was like he'd vanished into thin air. We searched around the cabin and in the nearby woods, but it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. That's when we realized that something was seriously wrong. Our car was our lifeline, our way to get help if needed. We rushed to it, but when Ethan tried to start the engine, it was dead, as if someone had tampered with it. Fear really started to sink in then. We were stranded in the middle of nowhere, with no way to contact the outside world. It wasn't like in the horror movies where you can just dial 911 or call for help. We were on our own, and whatever had happened to Alex was still a mystery. We decided to go back to the cabin and quickly realized that our situation had gone from bad to worse. The initial confusion and concern over Alex's disappearance had given way to a growing sense of unease that seemed to seep into the very walls of the cabin. We huddled together in the dimly lit living room, our flashlights casting long, eerie shadows on the wooden walls. The once inviting cabin now felt like a prison, and the forest beyond the windows seemed to press in on us, as if it were alive with a sinister intent. The atmosphere inside was heavy with tension. We tried to rationalize our predicament, but nothing made sense. Why had Alex disappeared without a trace? What had caused our car to malfunction so suddenly? We couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that something lurked just beyond our line of sight. Fear gnawed at us, and every creak of the cabin's aging timbers and every gust of wind outside made us jump. The feeling of being watched never left us, and the air grew colder, as if some unseen presence was breathing down our necks. We were isolated, cut off from the outside world, and it felt like we were pawns in some twisted game. We tried to come up with a plan. Ethan suggested that we stay put and wait for help, hoping someone would come looking for us when we didn't return. But as minutes turned into hours, our nerves frayed, and the sense of isolation deepened. We were trapped, and our only hope seemed to lie in understanding how to survive the night and escape this inexplicable nightmare. Despite our fear, we took turns keeping watch throughout the night, each of us hoping that at any moment, Alex would come back. As we sat huddled in the dimly lit room, our flashlights illuminating the tension in our faces, we couldn't shake the feeling that we were not alone. Strange sounds echoed from outside, eerie rustlings and sinister whispers that seemed to taunt us. Our imaginations ran wild, and each of us had a different theory about what happened to Alex and what was now stalking us. Ethan, usually level-headed, speculated that it might be some wild animal. Olivia thought it could be a prank gone terribly wrong, though none of us could fathom who would pull such a sinister joke. Sophie suggested the possibility of supernatural forces, while I couldn't shake the feeling that we were dealing with something beyond our understanding. The cabin itself began to feel like a trap, and the walls seemed to close in on us as our fear grew. We avoided looking outside as if the very act of peering through the windows might invite the horrors lurking in the woods. The hours felt like an eternity, and the anxiety that gripped us was unrelenting. The sinister sounds outside became more frequent, and at times, it sounded like something was scratching at the windows or trying to force its way inside. We clung to one another, our nerves fraying with each passing minute. Then, in the midst of the oppressive darkness, we heard it, a bone-chilling, otherworldly howl that sent shivers down our spines. It was unlike any sound we'd ever heard, a haunting blend of anguish that froze our blood. We knew at that moment that whatever lurked outside was no ordinary creature. The night seemed endless, and the cabin's walls, solid as they were, began to feel inadequate. Our flashlights flickered as the batteries drained, and our hearts pounded in our chests as we realized that we were running out of time. Ethan, ever the protector, took the lead. He armed us with whatever makeshift weapons we could find in the cabin, fireplace pokers, kitchen knives, anything that might give us a fighting chance. Our trembling hands clutched these feeble defenses as we prepared to confront the unknown. Every creak of the cabin's floorboards and every distant sound from the forest outside made our nerves fray even more. We knew we couldn't stay cooped up forever, and the cabin had become a trap in its own right. It was a matter of survival now, and we had to face whatever lurked in the darkness. Ethan made a plan. We'd make a break for our car, hoping that it would start and carry us away from this nightmare. We would stick together, moving as quietly as possible, and use our flashlights sparingly to avoid drawing attention. It was a slim chance, but it was the only one we had. As we made our way through the cabin, the silence was deafening. We strained our ears for any sign of the creature, but it remained elusive. The eerie howls from earlier had subsided, leaving an unsettling stillness in their wake. When we reached the front door, we braced ourselves for what lay beyond. Ethan slowly turned the door knob, and with bated breath, we stepped out into the cold night. The forest loomed around us, the trees like silent sentinels in the darkness. We moved in a tight formation, our flashlights casting eerie beams into the night. Every step was weighed down by the fear that at any moment, the creature might pounce. Our car came into view, and we quickened our pace, relief flooding our hearts. But just as hope began to flicker, a guttural growl echoed from the shadows. Our flashlights revealed a glimpse of glowing eyes and a hulking silhouette, and terror seized us. Ethan, driven by fear and desperation, lunged at the creature with a fireplace poker, striking it with all his might. The creature let out a shriek of pain and anger, and a chaotic struggle ensued. We joined the fray, fighting with all our strength against the nightmarish intruder. But it was a futile battle. The creature, though injured, proved to be a formidable adversary, its strength and resilience beyond anything we could have imagined. With a final bone-chilling screech, it retreated into the shadows, leaving us battered and shaken. We realized that our attempts to fend off the creature were in vain, and we had no choice but to retreat to the safety of the cabin. Gasping for breath, we sprinted back, our hearts pounding in our chests. As we reached the cabin and slammed the door shut, a sickening realization washed over us. Olivia was missing. We frantically called out for Olivia, but there was no response. We had been so consumed by the battle with the creature that we hadn't noticed her absence until now. Panic set in as we realized that one of our own had vanished, just as Alex had earlier in the night. With Olivia missing, panic surged through our group like wildfire. We couldn't fathom how she had disappeared right under our noses, and the fear that the creature had taken her intensified our desperation. Ethan, still clutching the fireplace poker, made a swift decision. We couldn't leave Olivia behind, not in the clutches of whatever malevolent force lurked in the woods. We had to go back out, search for her, and bring her back to safety. Our flashlights flickered to life once more, and we cautiously stepped back into the frigid night, our hearts heavy with worry. The forest was even more oppressive now, and every rustle of leaves and snapping twigs sent shivers down our spines. We called Olivia's name, our voices trembling, but there was no response. The creature, if it was still out there, remained hidden, leaving us in an eerie silence broken only by the sounds of our own anxious breathing. We retraced our steps, back to where we had last seen Olivia, back to the place where the battle with the creature had taken place. But there was no sign of her. It was as if she had vanished without a trace, just like Alex had earlier. We expanded our search, moving deeper into the woods, calling Olivia's name again and again. Our flashlights cast shaky beams into the darkness, illuminating twisted tree trunks and tangled underbrush. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, every rustle a potential danger. Time stretched on, and our hope dwindled with each passing moment. The realization that we were facing an adversary beyond our understanding weighed heavily on us. The forest was a labyrinth of uncertainty, and Olivia's fate remained a mystery. After what felt like an eternity, we reluctantly returned to the cabin. Our search had yielded nothing, and we were forced to confront the grim reality that Olivia was now also a victim of the unknown terror that had befallen us. Inside the cabin, our exhaustion and fear reached a breaking point. We knew we couldn't stay here indefinitely, and our remaining options were dwindling. The creature, whatever it was, had shown we were no match for it. The hours dragged on, and our despair deepened as we huddled together in the cabin, the weight of our helplessness pressing down on us like a suffocating blanket. The bitter truth was that we were no closer to understanding the creature that had taken Alex and Olivia, and the forest outside had become a dark, impenetrable labyrinth of fear. We couldn't escape the feeling that we were being watched, that unseen eyes were fixated on us from the shadows. Every gust of wind and every creak of the cabin felt like a sinister presence. As the night wore on, exhaustion gnawed at us, but we dared not sleep. The nightmares that had become our reality were far too real to risk losing ourselves in sleep's oblivion. Our determination to survive kept us awake, even as our bodies screamed for rest. We decided to stay huddled together in the living room, our flashlights flickering and our nerves frayed. The noise from outside continued, an eerie symphony of rustlings and strange, haunting cries that echoed through the night. But as the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon, something changed. The noises outside, the eerie whispers and otherworldly howls, started to fade. With each passing moment, they grew quieter, as if the approaching dawn had driven the creature away. As the morning light filtered into the cabin, we cautiously approached the windows and peered outside. The forest lay in silence, the malevolent presence that had haunted us all night seemingly gone. It was a surreal moment of relief and disbelief. The creature, whatever it was, had departed with the arrival of daylight, leaving us shaken and bewildered. With the morning light came a sense of eerie calm. The creature that had haunted us throughout the night had vanished, leaving us with a chilling uncertainty. We ventured outside, looking everywhere for any sign of Olivia and Alex, but they remained elusive, as if swallowed by the very darkness that had shrouded us. Exhausted and shaken to our cores, we knew that our only option was to leave the cabin behind. We had survived the night, but the mysteries of that harrowing experience still weighed heavily on our minds. We couldn't explain the creature's sudden departure with the dawn, and we were left with an unsettling sense of unfinished business. Reluctantly, we made our way back to the car, the same vehicle that had malfunctioned so mysteriously the previous night. Miraculously, this time, it started without a hitch, as if the malevolent force that had plagued us had finally released its grip. As we drove away from that accursed cabin and the forest that had held us captive, our minds raced with questions. What had happened to Alex and Olivia? What was the true nature of the creature that had terrorized us? Desperation gnawed at us, and we decided to seek out help. We drove for what felt like hours, searching for any signs of civilization. The forest seemed endless, and the roads twisted and turned in ways that disoriented us. Our cell phones had no signal, and the isolation of the wilderness was unforgiving. As the day wore on, we finally came across a small town, nestled at the edge of the forest. We rushed into a local diner, frantic and disheveled, and begged for assistance. The townsfolk listened to our harrowing tale with a mixture of disbelief and concern. They assured us that they would organize a search party to find our missing friends, but hours turned into days, and those days turned into weeks. Despite the efforts of the townspeople, there was no trace of Olivia and Alex. It was as if they had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only questions and a sense of profound loss. In the years that followed, we tried to put the horrors of that night behind us, but the memories lingered. We had escaped the clutches of the creature, but the fate of our friends haunted our thoughts. The woods held their secrets close, and the cabin remained a dark enigma, a place we dared not revisit. Story 3. The Midnight Feast. It all began with the simple idea of an adventure, a break from our mundane lives. John, Lisa, Mike, and I were close friends, and we yearned for an escape from the routine. We'd heard rumors of a secluded area, far from the beaten path, untouched by the usual throngs of campers. It sounded perfect for our little escape. So, one sunny Saturday morning, we loaded our backpacks with camping gear and provisions, left our everyday worries behind, and embarked on a journey into the heart of the wilderness. The drive to the trailhead was filled with anticipation and laughter as we played our favorite tunes, stopping along the way for snacks and scenic views. The trail, at first, was like any other we'd explored. The dirt path crunched under our feet, and the rustling leaves provided the soundtrack to our adventure. We took photos of wildflowers, majestic trees, and sweeping vistas, savoring the feeling of being enveloped by nature's beauty. It was the kind of serenity that one often seeks in the great outdoors. As we ventured further into the woods, the canopy above grew thicker, and the sunlight dimmed. That's when things began to feel different. A quiet settled over the forest, a hush that seemed unnatural. It was as though the woods were holding its breath, waiting for something. Our laughter and chatter started to wane as the unsettling sensation of being watched slowly crept over us. We tried to dismiss it as mere nerves, the byproduct of our expedition into the unknown. "It's just the eeriness of the forest," we said, convincing ourselves that there was nothing to be concerned about. But the atmosphere remained thick with an unspoken unease. Then, we stumbled upon something that would defy all attempts at rationalization. Strange symbols and intricate carvings were etched into the bark of the trees along the trail. They were unlike any symbols we'd seen before, utterly foreign to us. We couldn't decipher their meaning, and their presence added a layer of mystery to the already unsettling environment. Our curiosity battled with our growing trepidation, but curiosity won out. We took pictures of the enigmatic symbols, speculating on their origins and significance. Perhaps they were the markings of some local legend, or remnants of an ancient culture that had once inhabited this land. These symbols seemed to speak of stories unknown, and an inexplicable sense of foreboding settled upon us. By the time we found the ideal spot to set up camp in a picturesque clearing, the sun was already dipping below the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest floor. We gathered logs and started a campfire, its dancing flames providing the only source of light in the encroaching darkness. The night was young, and the stars above shone brighter than we had ever seen them before. We sat around the fire, wrapped in the warmth of the flames, exchanging stories and sharing laughs. It was a perfect moment in the wilderness, or so we thought. As the hours ticked away, the feeling of being watched became increasingly pronounced. It was as if an invisible presence lingered just beyond the ring of firelight, watching our every move. We cast anxious glances into the darkness, but could find no source for our unease. We attributed it to the natural anxiety that can come with venturing into the wilderness, laughed off our irrational fears, and chalked it up to overactive imaginations. As the night deepened and our campfire crackled, casting flickering shadows over the clearing, an unsettling silence fell over our group. The presence of the enigmatic symbols and the feeling of being observed from the darkness had chipped away at our initial excitement. We now huddled close to the fire, our laughter having given way to tense whispers. It was John who first broke the uneasy quiet. "Those symbols," he said, his voice wavering. "I can't shake the feeling that they mean something, and the sensation of being watched. It's too real to be mere paranoia." Lisa nodded in agreement, her face reflecting the same apprehension. "What if there's a reason no one comes out here?" she asked, her eyes darting nervously to the surrounding trees. "What if there's something dangerous nearby?" Mike, ever the pragmatic one, tried to reassure us. "Let's not jump to conclusions," he said, his voice steady but strained. "This is probably just a local legend or some strange art project. And the feeling of being watched? It's probably just wild animals nearby. We're well-prepared campers. We'll be fine." In our hearts, though, we knew something was amiss. We shared some nervous laughter, attempting to lighten the mood, but our minds kept drifting back to the eerie symbols and the disconcerting sensation in the woods. The stories we'd told around the campfire earlier now seemed like distant memories, and an unspoken dread hung in the air. Despite our efforts to rationalize the situation, the night wore on with an ominous stillness. The forest had fallen eerily silent, devoid of the usual sounds of nocturnal creatures. As we gazed into the fire, we each stole uneasy glances at the inky blackness beyond the clearing, wondering what unseen eyes might be watching us. Hours passed, and sleep remained elusive. We decided to take turns keeping watch, our nerves on edge. I volunteered to take the first shift, clutching a flashlight and peering into the darkness, but the feeling of being observed was impossible to shake. It was during Mike's watch that the first chilling sign of the forest's secret inhabitants became unmistakable. The night air carried with it a faint, otherworldly chanting, a haunting melody that sent shivers down our spines. Mike whispered urgently to us, and we strained our ears to listen to the distant, eerie chorus. It was then that we realized this was no ordinary forest. Those symbols on the trees weren't just part of a local legend. They were a warning. And the unnerving feeling of being watched was not a product of our imagination. We had unwittingly trespassed into territory unknown, a place inhabited by something far more sinister than we could have ever imagined. The haunting chants persisted through the night, their origin still shrouded in the impenetrable darkness of the surrounding forest. Mike's unease deepened as he sat by the fading embers of the fire, listening intently to the eerie chorus. His whisper was tinged with apprehension as he beckoned us over to share what he'd heard. "It's not animals," Mike said, his voice quivering. It's voices, people's voices, but it's like no language I've ever heard. It sounds like some sort of ritual." Our hearts sank at his words. What had begun as a quest for adventure now seemed like a descent into a chilling mystery. Our rationalizations were unraveling, and it was becoming increasingly clear that something far more enigmatic and ominous was taking shape in the depths of the forest. With heavy hearts, we deliberated on the best course of action. It was a unanimous decision that someone needed to investigate these strange rituals. In a quiet, determined voice, John offered to go on a reconnaissance mission. "I'll check it out," he said, his expression a mix of resolve and worry. "But we should stay put. It's too dangerous for all of us to go. I'll be back soon, I promise." We reluctantly agreed, lending John a flashlight and a walkie-talkie to keep in touch. Clutching the light and his courage, he ventured cautiously toward the eerie sounds, stepping softly in an attempt to avoid detection. We watched his retreating figure, his flashlight casting a narrow beam of light into the pitch-black forest. Minutes felt like hours as we waited in tense silence. John's flashlight beam flickered, then disappeared into the darkness. We strained to hear any sounds that would indicate his progress, but all was eerily silent. Panic set in as we wondered what had become of our friend, his absence becoming unbearable. Finally, the forest spoke again, this time in the form of John's frantic whispers. He had found something that had filled him with terror. His voice crackled over the walkie-talkie, the message broken and unintelligible. Fear was palpable in his words as he mentioned something about a hidden village, people in strange masks, and the chilling realization that they were not alone in the forest. We were left with a choice: stay and await John's return, or attempt to locate him ourselves. Fear propelled us into action as we armed ourselves with flashlights and cautiously made our way toward the direction John had gone. The forest, now alive with the unsettling echoes of the ritual, seemed to close in around us, its secrets beckoning us into its shadowy depths. The forest was alive with whispers and the eerie melodies of the ritual as we ventured into the darkness to find our friend. Each step felt like a descent into an abyss of fear, and the weight of the unknown hung heavily upon us. John's distressing message still echoed in our minds, urging us forward. We moved cautiously through the underbrush, our flashlights cutting through the obsidian night. It was then that we stumbled upon the first concrete evidence of John's whereabouts. Abandoned on the forest floor were his flashlight and the walkie-talkie, their beams and voices silenced. Our hearts sank as we realized that he might have been discovered. Dread gnawed at us as we followed the path deeper into the woods. The chorus of voices grew louder, and the strange symbols carved into the trees became more frequent. It was as if we were entering a realm untouched by time, one where the secrets of an ancient culture were being unveiled before our very eyes. Suddenly, we found ourselves on the outskirts of a clearing bathed in an eerie, dim light. We hid behind a curtain of trees and foliage and peered through the shadows. What we witnessed sent shockwaves of terror through our bodies. In the center of the clearing was a makeshift village, a grotesque parody of normalcy. The structures were constructed from gnarled branches and animal hides, and the air was heavy with the stench of burning incense. Figures in strange masks moved around, their movements synchronized with the haunting rhythm of the chanting. They were dressed in tattered, filthy garments, and in their midst, we saw John, bound and gagged. Our hearts pounded as we watched, unable to do anything. The masked figures performed a macabre dance, and in the center of it all was a large, grotesque cauldron. Fear gripped us as we realized that the ritual had an ominous purpose, one that we couldn't fathom. We huddled together, deliberating our next steps. As a feeling of powerlessness washed over us, we knew that we had to find a way to rescue John. Yet, the tribe's numbers and the intensity of their rituals made it clear that any attempt at a rescue would be fraught with danger. The forest seemed to close in around us, and the symbols on the trees whispered dark secrets. Our adventure had become a waking nightmare, a descent into a terrifying and surreal world. The daunting task of confronting the tribe and saving our friend lay before us. The chilling reality of what we were facing became increasingly evident, and the fate of John, as well as our own, hung in the balance as we braced ourselves for the harrowing events yet to unfold. Huddled in the shadows, we knew that time was running out. The ominous tribal rituals showed no signs of stopping, and John's predicament grew increasingly dire. He was bound, surrounded by masked figures, and his muffled cries for help were drowned out by the eerie chants. We needed a plan, and fast. Whispers among us turned into a hurried strategy session as we mapped out the best way to approach this delicate and dangerous situation. Our options were limited, but we couldn't leave our friend in the clutches of these strangers. We decided to split up, each taking a different vantage point around the clearing, which would allow us to converge on the tribe from multiple angles. Our hope was that by creating confusion and distraction, we might be able to free John. As we moved into position, our hearts raced. The bizarre dance continued, and the masked figures seemed lost in their ritualistic trance. It was as if we were intruders in a macabre theater of horrors. Lisa, hidden in the shadows, had the perfect angle to keep an eye on John. We watched as she signaled to us, pointing toward his restraints. This was our cue. Mike and I inched closer to the clearing, shrouded by the night, making sure our approach was as silent as possible. The moment of action was upon us. We waited for the right instant when the attention of the masked figures seemed to be at its lowest. Then, with a rush of adrenaline, we lunged into the clearing. In the chaos that followed, the tribe's reaction was a combination of shock and rage. The eerie chanting dissolved into chaos, and the masked figures scrambled to respond to our unexpected intrusion. Our diversionary tactics had worked, if only for a moment. Lisa managed to cut John's restraints, and he sprang to his feet, disoriented but relieved. Together we sprinted back into the cover of the forest, pushing through the underbrush and back toward the campsite. The cannibal tribe gave chase, their menacing cries and eerie drums echoing behind us. However, the pursuit was relentless, and some of the masked figures were fast and agile. They closed in on us, and as we reached our campsite, the tribe descended upon us with savage determination. In the ensuing struggle, we lost sight of Lisa and Mike. Panicked cries pierced the night as we desperately fought off the masked assailants. Amidst the chaos, we saw Lisa dragged away, her screams fading into the darkness. The tribe showed no mercy. John, now freed, and I fought to escape, but Mike had vanished without a trace, and our remaining hope of saving him was dwindling. John and I fled deeper into the impenetrable woods, the sound of the pursuit gradually fading into the distance. Fear, sorrow, and guilt weighed heavily on our hearts. We had tried to save our friends, but we were forced to abandon them to the horrors of the tribe. We found a hidden alcove in the forest, shrouded by thick vegetation, and there we collapsed, gasping for breath. Our minds reeled with a profound sense of loss, and we sat in silence, grappling with the haunting memories of what we had witnessed. In the depths of the night, the forest whispered its sinister secrets, and the eerie symbols etched on the trees seemed to shift and dance in our tormented imagination. The terrifying rituals of the tribe were burned into our minds, their grotesque dances and primal chants serving as a testament to the depths of human depravity. As we contemplated our next move, a gruesome reality gnawed at our conscience. The horrifying fate of our friends was etched in our minds. Lisa's terrified screams and Mike's mysterious disappearance haunted us, their agonizing ends serving as a grim reminder of the evil that lurked in the woods. In the distance, we could still hear the haunting echoes of the tribe's rituals, a constant reminder that we were far from safe. We knew that we had to find our way out of this nightmare, but the uncharted trail was a labyrinth of malevolence, and we were caught in its unforgiving grip. As John and I sat in the secluded alcove, the weight of our harrowing ordeal pressed upon us. The knowledge that we had left Lisa and Mike behind to face an unimaginable fate gnawed at our conscience. The forest around us, shrouded in an eerie silence, held the chilling secrets of the tribe's rituals. We knew we had to take action and attempt to find a way back to civilization, to escape the nightmare that had become our reality. But the uncharted trail offered no signs, no solace, only an unending sea of towering trees and echoing shadows. The tribal chants still resonated in the distance, a constant reminder of the relentless pursuit of the tribe. We could hear their eerie drums and the haunting melodies, an unsettling cadence that seemed to draw closer as the night wore on. John and I dared not rest for long, as the fear of discovery by the tribe loomed over us. With grim determination, we resumed our journey through the tangled undergrowth, attempting to navigate by the stars above and the dim light of our dwindling flashlights. As the night deepened, we stumbled upon a grim discovery. It was a crude totem, adorned with grisly trophies, human bones. This macabre monument marked our realization that the tribe's territory stretched further than we had initially thought. The horrifying truth was that we might never truly escape their clutches. The path ahead remained obscure, and the echoing chants and eerie drumbeats had become a haunting backdrop to our descent into darkness. Our senses were heightened, our every movement a cautious step in an unending battle for survival. We had been thrust into a treacherous game of cat and mouse, one that we were ill-equipped to play. The forest seemed to conspire against us, its branches and roots becoming unseen obstacles in our perilous journey. John and I, battered and consumed by fear, had evaded the relentless pursuit of the cannibal tribe, but were no closer to finding our way out. As the first light of dawn began to pierce the oppressive darkness, we discovered ourselves in a grotesque clearing. Human skulls adorned the periphery, forming a gruesome perimeter that spoke of the tribe's malevolence. The fear in our hearts deepened, knowing that escape was an uncertain promise. We pressed onward, following a faint, meandering trail that seemed to lead deeper into the tribe's territory. With the chants and drum beats now audible once more, we knew that our time was running out. It was then, amid the eerie silence, that we stumbled upon an even more horrific sight. In a hidden glade, we found an assembly of figures, masked and adorned in the gruesome garb of the tribe. At the center of their gathering was a macabre feast. A chilling realization washed over us. The tribe feasted on the flesh of their victims. In the midst of the depravity, we spotted a grisly trophy, a necklace made of teeth, an abhorrent collection of mementos from the victims of their ritualistic savagery. Among the horrors, our eyes met with the vacant gaze of Lisa and Mike, their mutilated remains adding to the grotesque ornamentation of the cannibal tribe. The sight was almost too much to bear. Grief, anger, and a sickening dread welled up within us. We knew that we had to escape, to make it out of this waking nightmare. With the cannibal tribe encircling their abhorrent banquet, John and I retreated, hearts heavy with the weight of the atrocities we had witnessed. With each step, we knew that we could be their next victims. Our flight became a desperate race against time and death itself. The forest seemed to taunt us with its unending, impenetrable tangle of underbrush and the relentless echoes of the cannibal tribe's rituals. After narrowly escaping the tribe's clutches, John and I ventured further into the uncharted woods, desperate to put as much distance as possible between us and the horrors we had witnessed. The haunting chants slowly faded into the distance, But the memory of our gruesome discovery continued to torment us. We found our way back to civilization, our faces etched with a tale of terror that left us in shock. We reached out to the authorities, providing them with every detail of our harrowing ordeal. It was a gruesome account of the cannibal tribe's rituals, their depraved feasts, and the grisly fates of our friends, Lisa and Mike. The law enforcement and search parties were mobilized immediately, determined to investigate the tribe's existence and bring an end to their barbaric practices. News of our horrifying encounter sent shockwaves through the community, leading to a swift and relentless pursuit of the cannibal tribe. As the authorities descended upon the uncharted woods, the shocking truth behind the tribe's existence slowly unraveled. It was discovered that this hidden, malevolent community had eluded detection for years, conducting their sinister rituals in secrecy and terrorizing the unsuspecting souls who had ventured into their territory. The tribe's gruesome traditions were exposed to the world, and the survivors, John and I, were finally able to find some semblance of closure. Yet the scars of that nightmarish journey would never truly fade. The haunting memories of Lisa's screams, Mike's mysterious disappearance, and the sickening horrors of the cannibal tribe will forever haunt our nightmares. That's all for today, folks. Thank you all for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like, subscribe, and let me know down in the comments below which one of these was your favorite story. See you all very soon.